Hello, this is Happy from Pro Plugins, and this video is about introducing the MIDI Encoders plugin. This plugin lets you control the encoders on the screen with a MIDI controller, this one over here, or any other MIDI controller. It's a touch emulation plugin, so it emulates touching and rotating around the encoder. It can discover the user interface elements on the screen, so if your encoders go to the right, it will still work, okay? Or if you, I don't know, resize the screen, it will still work. Now you can already see, because of that, it doesn't matter which attribute group you choose, it works on all. These XY encoders also work. This is the fifth encoder, so this will scroll Y. Let's try it here. Okay, so I'm scrolling vertically in the pool, and when I press this button, it will scroll horizontally. This button is configured to switch the encoders from the inner encoders to the outer encoders. Let's see this configuration for a minute. This is the plugins menu, and configuration has on the bottom flip inner outer. You can configure a MIDI node that does that. We'll go through the configuration later. Let's also see where this plugin works. It works with 3D view. You can choose your fixtures. Did I choose them? Yes. And move them around and rotate them. Also, okay. It works with the layout view. When you're selecting in setup mode, of course, you can also move them around with your encoders just like you would on the screen. If you push, my encoders are push encoders, so when I touch them, it's like clicking here, which opens the attribute dialog in this case. Okay, so I can do it by clicking on the encoders. Let's see, it also works in timecode. These are different encoders here. There are 2 rows, and also you can see that, well, if I had some info in this timecode, then we would see all of them working, but it's all working. Okay, just a small note about resolution. One click of the encoder, okay, it's, see, one click, changes 1% of the value of the attribute. This is exactly the same as it is with the real encoders. When you turn some encoders, some MIDI controllers can, when you turn the encoder faster, then they send relative messages of more than 1 or -1, depending on the direction. It can set amount of 3, 2, 3, 5, maybe 10, which makes the value change faster. So this plugin supports those, and when you turn it faster, then the value changes faster. Okay, now let's go through the configuration. When you hit the plugin object, then you get this dialog, and when you configure, you get this beautiful custom dialog for the configuration. We got some global settings here and the MIDI mapping table here. So for each, we got 5 rotation mappings, 5 click mappings, and 1 flip inner outer. We showed this before. For each mapping, you can enable or disable it. If your MIDI controller has only 3 encoders or 4, like some of the MIDI cons, then you can just disable the rest, or disable the clicks. You can map the clicks to some buttons if your encoders are not clickable. And that's it. Now, please notice that the rotation, which it's about relative messages, can only be of control change type, and the clicks can only be of note on type. Same as the flip in out. This should be note on messages. This should be control change messages. You cannot change that. Okay, let's go to the top here. So these 2 options are actually not the plugin options. These are options from the settings on PC, this MIDI in device and MIDI via on PC command wing. Probably you're not working with a command wing, so this should be off in order for your MIDI device to be able to communicate with the MA3. And this should just, you know, show your MIDI device here. Now, so they appear here in the plugin configuration just for convenience. You can see the values, so you can see if something's wrong, and you can click on these to just as a shortcut to go to this menu. Okay, let's continue. Relative mode, one of the most important settings. Your MIDI controller may only work in one of these modes, or it can have a configuration where you can choose what mode the MIDI controller works in. There are 3 standard modes. You can hit this help button and it shows a table that explains each of the modes. In each mode, the MIDI controller sends different messages, different velocities, which are interpreted as relative amounts, either +1 or -1 or more than that when you turn it faster. Just make sure you choose the correct one. This option is just to enable or disable the plugin. Let's just see. Of course, okay, this plugin generates macros, and it also generates MIDI remotes where you can find them here. So all of these are generated by the plugin. Why so many? It's a more complicated explanation. And all of them are named for plugins, MIDI encoder, zone. Well, so you can have your own mappings here, and these are what the plugin generated. Please don't change these names because they are used to remove these mappings once you uninstall the plugin. But if you want to temporarily disable the plugin, if you want to troubleshoot something, then you can use this MIDI remotes disabled. So it will keep your configuration, it will not forget it. The plugin will remember it, but they won't appear in your MIDI remotes. So you can maybe check your own MIDI mappings that they are working. Okay, so you can enable this again. Rotate direction inverted. Of course, it's if you turn it clockwise, the value should be rising, and counterclockwise should be going down. So if your MIDI controller sends relative values inverted, so you can uninvert them here or double invert them here in the plugin. Now, this row is actually not a configuration. It says set all MIDI channels. It's just a shortcut for setting all these channels to the same channel. So you can hit 10, all of them change to 10. Okay, and then you got these. So mostly you'll be only setting the channel and then setting all these MIDI indexes. That's it. Once you update, it takes 1 second maybe, see, and everything is good to go. Oh, by the way, there is another plugin that you can find on my website, and this is the pool browser. And if you have the pool browser, then it's actually a nice feature is that all Pro plugins communicate with one another. And here you can see that when I installed the MIDI encoders, it created this subpool for the MIDI encoders, and you can see this is like macros 1 through 100 and so forth, and you have this subpool showing you exactly the macros that belong to the MIDI encoders plugin, so you can find them and see what I've done. We can also show you the other options in this dialog. Uninstall is pretty obvious. When you uninstall it, you get a message that it's gonna say that it's gonna delete everything that is related to this plugin. In this case, it's some macros and sequences. There's I think 1 sequence that it generates for the flip inner outer settings, and that's it. Uninstall, uninstall completed. You're good to go. Everything is gone. Your MIDI remotes and macros and everything. That's it. MIDI encoders, get it now.